Good evening, everyone. I am Andy Shane. I'm managing editor of the Post and Courier Columbia, and welcome to A Conversation with Shane Beamer. Before we begin, let me tell you a little bit about the Post and Courier, which is the state's largest news gathering organization. The Post and Courier has offices all over the state. Its home office in Charleston, Greenville, Myrtle Beach. It has a sister paper in Aiken and an office here in Columbia, where we have 13 journalists covering the capital city area. I want to thank everyone who's watching us online this evening, as well as the crowd here in Backstreet on Divine Street here in Columbia. I want to thank Backstreet for having us this evening and for hosting us. I want to thank the University of South Carolina for helping us arrange this event with Coach Beamer. We have two veteran journalists who are going to be talking to Coach Beamer tonight. They are Gene Sapakoff. He is the Post and Courier's sports columnist and college sports editor. He's been with the paper for 35 years, and I'm told that if he gets another 5 years, he gets a set of steak knives. And behind me over here is David Cloninger. David has been covering USC athletics for almost 2 decades at this point. He, of course, is our main USC beat writer, and soon, keep an eye out for it, David is going to have an exclusive newsletter that you can subscribe to get all the insight and expertise he has to share about Gamecock athletics. But without further ado, let's start our conversation with USC head football coach, Shane Beamer.
Shane, first of all, thanks for doing this, and thanks for bringing your wonderful family. It's just so neat to see all you guys together, and so happy right now. Shane, I wanted to ask you, I know you can't specifically talk about recruiting, but it seems to be going pretty well. And I wonder, this news recently that the NCAA and the college football playoff, I should say, seems determined to expand the playoff to 12 teams. Now, you with Oklahoma and Georgia, you've been in the 4-team playoffs, but would a 12-team playoff be just music to your ears when you're out on the recruiting trail? Is that good for the Gamecocks?
Hey, you guys jumped right into it. No softball questions or anything yet. No, thanks, Paul. First of all, thanks for having me. It's great to be here. It's great at Backstreets, and appreciate everyone coming out and being part of this, and everyone that's watching online as well. No, I think so. I think anything that gives more access to more teams, I'm in favor of. And certainly I'm a traditionalist, and I'm a fan of the bowls and don't want to lose the meaning of the bowls. But certainly when you play in a conference like the SEC, you want to give as many teams as possible opportunities to compete for a national championship, and there's a lot of them in this conference for sure. So I think 12 is a good number, the way they've set it up and arranged it, and eager to see how things look going forward. But I'm the more and more I read about it and learn about it, the more in favor of it I am.
Shane, with that 12-team playoff coming in the future, there's also going to be a big part of recruiting also coming with name, image, likeness. How does that play into recruiting? How is it going to change your approach, knowing that kids can now get endorsements and that kind of thing, and you're operating really into a completely different system?
Yeah, it's different. It's the first time we've really had to address it with guys, and whether you agree with it, don't agree with it, think they should be compensated, don't think they should be compensated, it's here, and you better get on board with it, and you better figure out how to best position ourselves to capitalize on it and help our players in those situations. So one, our university's hired an outside firm, Altius, that has come in and is helping us and giving our players direction and staff in regards to that and how they should go about it. But then in recruiting as well, I think certainly we're as well positioned as anyone. I can't count how many individual meetings with prospects in my office since June 1st. I mean, it's every single day and multiple each day. It's actually only one young man has brought it up to me in my office, believe it or not. But it's certainly something that we talk about to them, that, hey, it's coming, and where better than Columbia, South Carolina, to be able to capitalize on this opportunity for you as an individual in a college town this size. There's no pro sports in South Carolina that you battle. It's not like you're in the city of Atlanta and you're having to battle the Hawks and the Braves and the Falcons and everyone else, across the area. It's, 2 Power 5 programs in this state. And it's a great opportunity for you in a city this size to be able to capitalize on your name, image, and likeness. So we're addressing it still in the early stages. I mean, just last week, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, it'll be wild. I mean, just last week I saw a sophomore, upcoming junior in high school that put out anyone that wants to utilize me in my city for endorsements. My DMs are open, and he's an upcoming junior in high school. But it's a trickle down effect, but at the same time it is, and it's here, and you better get on board with it.
That's all I was actually going to ask. I mean, have any of your current players, this won't take effect in South Carolina until next summer, but have any of your current players come up and said, Coach, what can I do now? Or, how are you talking to your current guys before the company gets in and before the NCAA?
Yeah, not to me directly, but I'd be naive to not think that it was going on. I mean, it was going on in Oklahoma 2 years ago when all this first started talking. I mean, I can remember Spencer Rattler, our quarterback at Oklahoma last season, before Spencer even became the starting quarterback when he was Jalen Hurts' his backup, he was already talking to some of the receivers about the partnerships they could do together when all this went into effect. And this was 2 years ago. So certainly our guys are aware of it and happy for them and want to be able to help them. But at the end of the day, it's about winning football games, and the more success you have as a football team, the better opportunities you're going to have from that standpoint.
Shane, looking at that shirt you have, that's a cool shirt, a cool new design. I predict a lot of these people are going to have that shirt pretty soon. But in just looking at the gear that you have, now you've been at Virginia Tech, Oklahoma, Georgia, Mississippi State, Tennessee. You must have so much gear of so many schools. And maybe I should bring your kids up here, or your wife, to answer this question, but where is all that gear that you've had? Is that like at a Goodwill in Mongolia, or is that at a Beamer storage unit, or where is it?
It's probably a little bit of everywhere, to be honest with you. My wife, Emily, who's here, my 3 children, they would tell you that I'm a pack rat, so I save everything. And it's hard for me to part with stuff for sure. Most times when we move, I'll keep some stuff just to wear around the house. So if you came, and looked at the personal stuff that I own right now, you'd have something, at least 1 or 2 things from every school that I've been, just to wear around the house and whatever, never really out in public. It came in handy when this job came around because I fortunately had saved a lot of stuff from South Carolina. So my oldest daughter, Sutton, she was wearing old South Carolina sweatshirts that I had from 2007 and 8 when I was here before, when I got hired. So it definitely came in handy. We give a lot to Goodwill. We give to people in the neighborhood. I know when we left Georgia, we had some people that came to the garage and just kind of picked stuff left and right. Same thing in Oklahoma. So usually I'll make a big pile in the garage of what I'm not taking with me or keeping. And then after that, Emily's in charge of who she wants to give it to.
And that's
fair enough.
Yeah. In that same vein, Shane, I want to ask something that's probably on everybody's mind, and not about week 3 against Georgia, not about Thanksgiving week against Clemson. It's about the uniforms.
There's no doubt. That's the number one question at every Gamecock Club event that I go to. Everybody keeps asking me
and saying, what's he going to do? And I said, I don't know. I haven't talked to him about it. So you're obviously here with Coach Spurrier, where there was a 1 uniform load, 1 road, 1 away, or 1 home, 1 away, and then a special big name garnet, or big game garnet. Have you guys made those decisions about, are you going to have 1 stable helmet, 1 stable home jersey, what?
Well, you mentioned the shirt a minute ago. We obviously have a great partnership with Under Armour, and Larry Waters and Schuler Hayes do a great job in our equipment room. So they gave me the shirt when I got here. So we'll bring it up with him. Larry came to me last week and he said, I just need to know who's going to be making the decisions on what we wear each week. I said, me, first of all. So you don't have to worry about a vote amongst the players each week. But certainly we want to capitalize on the way that Under Armour takes care of us. And we do have multiple uniform combinations. I always ask prospects when they come in my office, which helmet or jersey they like best. And it's all over the place. Some garnet, some black, some white. But at the end of the day, I'm a believer in you better, as a coach, I want my players and our players worried more about how they're going to play on Saturday and a lot less on what the heck they're wearing on Saturday. And if we're spending time Monday through Friday worrying about what our uniform is going to be on Saturday, our minds are in the wrong place. So we'll mix it up from time to time, but I'm an old school. I've been at other programs, like you mentioned, that have their traditional uniforms they wear each week, and certainly mix it up from time to time also.
Gotcha. Shane, David referenced Coach Spurrier there and talking about the uniforms. I know, you've told a lot of stories about Coach Spurrier being so competitive. but do you have a definitive Steve Spurrier competitive story that you could kind of share with us?
Everybody always tells jokes about him on the golf course from how competitive he is. And he's one of those, like, and even he's one of those, if you're playing golf, anyone in here that plays golf, normally if you have a putt like that, it's typically a gimme. Pick it up and you don't even think twice about it. Like, not with him. Like, you putt everything out. And as recently as a couple months ago, we were playing for fun, and I was with my dad, and we were playing a alternate shot. So I would hit the shot, then my dad would hit it. We were playing against Coach Spurrier and Dan Mullen at Florida. And same thing, it was alternate shot. So my dad hit the putt, and I was responsible for hitting the next putt. Now, it wasn't even like 3 inches. It was like that. And my dad just went up and was going to put it in, and Coach Spurrier ran in there and stopped him and was like, no, it's alternate shot. Shane has to tap it in. So I went up in there and literally tapped it in just like that to finish the hole. But that's him, which is something to be said for that. I mean, there's not a cheating bone in his body, and not that was cheating, but with him on the golf course, he's extremely competitive, and you put everything out. There is no, all right, you get on a hole and you start hitting some shots sideways and you've made double bogey and you're just going to put the ball in your pocket and move on to the next hole. With him, you're going to play every shot out. And if you have to write a 14 on the scorecard for that hole, you are going to write a 14. And don't make the mistake of saying, I think it was a 13, because he knows what you made. And if you say I made a 13, he's going to count up every shot and say, no, it was a 14. You went here, and tell you every shot.
You ever try to take advantage of that by, like, saying on that 3-inch putt, get down and maybe shooting it like a pool cue?
I did it
just to make him mad.
No, because I don't want to do that. When I was working for him, I didn't want to make him mad.
Sure.
And then even now, certainly you don't want to do that either.
I mean, obviously, Shane, we've talked a lot, since you've been here, about the roster coming in, about how the team has kind of embraced the new staff and everything. Going into this summer, just a couple of housekeeping questions. Is there anybody hurt, recovering from surgery, who won't be ready for the start of fall camp, or is everybody pretty good?
No, knock on wood, everybody's good. We just had another staff meeting today and went through kind of the injury situation with the team and where everybody is, and everyone is full speed ahead, and we'll be ready to go in August. From Marshawn Lloyd and Kevin Harris has battled some injuries, and some guys coming off-season surgeries. They're all out there right now working with Coach Day and his staff, and are in great shape.
And obviously last year, COVID was a big, thing hanging over the entire season, hanging over the entire world. I know that there's been protocols put into place. You guys have done a great job with that, but yet not everybody has to take the vaccine among your roster. Just ballpark figure, if you can mention it, about how many players have got it, or is it the whole team, or is it guys still making up their minds?
It's not the whole team. I do know that we have some guys that are due for their second shot here over the next week. Percentage-wise, I get updated on that each week. I mean, we're not near 100%, but we're not near 30% either. I mean, it's a lot more than what it was in the springtime. I'll say that, and they've essentially got a few more weeks, I guess, here and to get the ball rolling where it's not going to affect them. And we've tried to just educate them, and we're not forcing them to do anything. We've educated them with our own doctors, articles that we've read, what's going on with other teams across pro sports, college sports, and just trying to make our guys aware of what's out there and educate them as much as possible. And at the end of the day, we can't force them to do anything, but we've also, they understand that the 2021 football season is going to be a lot different than 2020. 2020, if we had guys that were out with COVID or contact tracing and you couldn't play, that was a postponement.
Right.
There's no postponing things this year. It's a forfeit. So you work all week to play Georgia and you don't have the minimum roster numbers. It's not you get to play Georgia in December. You don't play Georgia, and that's a loss in the win column. And that's whether you're Alabama, Georgia, us, anybody, we're all in the same boat. So it's certainly different, and our guys are aware of that, and we're just trying to continue to educate them.
You have to play two of the best 4 programs in the country right now.
We get to play.
Get to play them. That's great. I like that.
All right.
And you're one competitive SOB too. I saw you play. I'm old enough to have seen you play as a player, snapper and special teams guy and everything. And I know that. I like that you said that. But What's your relationship like with Kirby Smart, who you worked with, obviously worked for, and what's your relationship like with Dabo Swinney?
I'd love to, I mean, honestly, I'd love to sit up here. First of all, ask me again in about 2 years, as I've been in the middle of these rivalries, and it may be different. There's certainly mutual respect. I'd love to be able to sit up here and tell you that I passionately hate both their guts, and I'm sure everyone here and watching would love for me to say that. But right now, I think there's mutual respect. You know, when I got announced that I was the head coach here at South Carolina late on that Saturday night, one of the first text messages that I had on Sunday morning was from Kirby. When my name was being mentioned the week before as a candidate, one of the first people that called me to say, man, I'm so happy for you, I hope it works out, was Dabo. And since I've been hired, I've talked to those guys on the phone, and they've offered to, you know, help and just be a resource if they want to reach out. And don't get me wrong, I mean, we're all competitive. I want to beat all their brains in, and they would say the same about me. And as I'm here longer and I'm in back in these rivalries more and more, I may say something differently in a year or two. I don't know, but certainly they have great programs. We have a great program. I'm worried about our program here, and they're worried about their programs. And don't get me wrong, I mean, it's fiercely competitive on the recruiting trail, and it makes it tough to have. I mean, Kirby was a guy that, growing up or coming up through the ranks, we were both kind of coming up as assistant coaches together, and he has a lake house in Georgia where my parents have a lake house in Georgia, and we used to spend a lot of time together, play golf every summer, work for him, and there's not a whole lot of that, you know, going on right now either. But and then you know, Dabo was the wide receivers coach and recruiting coordinator at Clemson when I was the recruiting coordinator here at South Carolina. So we kind of battled and went head to head before he became the head coach on that one as well. So fiercely competitive, mutual respect, you know, I would hope, and you know, nothing too negative to say about them yet, but recruiting hasn't cranked up quite yet. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You know, speaking of that,
how's that for my politically correct answer?
Good,
all right, I'm trying to.
But you know, Shane, speaking of that, you know who you're going to play in the league pretty much year in and year out. But South Carolina lately has been announcing a lot of future opponents, and some of these won't come around till the 30s. Some of them are coming up in a few years. But you know, Virginia Tech, NC State, Miami, North Carolina. Just the two questions. One, what do you think of having kind of those marquee non-SEC opponents on the schedule every year, and how much input do you get as the head coach? And I mean, do they come to you and say, we're thinking of this? Do you volunteer a suggestion that you might want to play those teams?
You know, you're right. So many of those were set before I even got the job here that there wasn't a whole lot of say in it. You know, Virginia Tech hadn't been announced yet, but they mentioned that it was in the works and was going to be announced. I think it's great. You know, obviously we play in the toughest league in America. We play our in-state rival every year. So right away, I mean, those are 9 really competitive, intense games that you're going to have. And then certainly I'm all for the regional rivalries and being able to play teams like that with the playoff and the changes coming. You want to put yourself in the best position to be one of those teams as well. And then I'm all for playing teams that are in areas that we recruit, you know, so the teams that we're playing going forward are all in areas that we will actively recruit in. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense for us to go play Iowa when we're not doing much recruiting in Iowa. But if we can schedule games with those teams you mentioned, or, you know, I'm just throwing names out there. I'm not saying things that were in the works, but, you know, Virginia, Maryland, places like that where we're going to be more and more active in recruiting. I think it's great, and it's great for the fan base. And I can remember growing up, South Carolina hadn't gotten in the SEC yet, and Virginia Tech wasn't in the Big East or the ACC, and South Carolina used to play Virginia Tech each and every year. And I know the fans at Virginia Tech loved it, and I hope the people at South Carolina did. And it was a great game then, and more and more like that, more matchups like that, the better, in my opinion.
I think you can still look at the media again. It's listed as VPI on a few of those as well. So
There's no doubt. It's
good. I mean, I believe you mentioned during your hiring press conference, you came to Williams-Brice with your dad. You were running cord for him. Well, that was a pretty bad night, though, for the Hokies.
Yeah, it was a bad night, but it was really my first. So from, you know, I was born in Charleston. We moved to Murray, Kentucky when I was 2 years old, when my dad was coaching at Murray State. So, you know, you play at Murray State, you played Austin Peay and Eastern Kentucky and Eastern Illinois, who we opened up with, and Morehead State and Southeast Missouri. You weren't going and playing the Nebraskas and the Oklahomas and Ohio States and all that of the world. So my first really exposure to quote unquote big time college football was my dad's first year at Virginia Tech when they came down to Columbia and played in Williams-Brice Stadium. And I just remember you've gone your last road game at Murray State, you played at Eastern Illinois. And then my dad got the head job at Virginia Tech, and the first like exposure on the road is coming down here and just, seeing Sterling Sharp and Todd Ellis and all these guys out there playing, and the crowd and the electricity in Williams-Brice Stadium. I mean, that as a young guy, that resonated with me and has always stuck with me. And probably is part of the reason I love this place so much, because that was the first like, wow, my dad's a big time college football coach. Now we got clobbered, like you said. And I think we tied in '89 when Virginia Tech came down here, back when you didn't have overtime, like 17-17 or something like that. But definitely always enjoyed coming down here to play, and still do now, more so than ever, being a part of this.
Shane, you look like you're in really good shape. What is your workout routine? I know head coaches especially, you guys are so busy, but what's your workout routine? And then also, like, what's your diet? Like, how do you work your diet? And especially in a place like South Carolina where there's so much great food, shrimp and grits and barbecue, and got to be a lot better food than Oklahoma, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But so what's your workout routine and what's your diet?
That's a shot across the bow from a guy that's from Colorado originally, kind of throwing it at Oklahoma.
Keep in mind what they eat in barbecue in Oklahoma and what they eat here.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, definitely amazing restaurants in Columbia, trying to get out to as many of them as I can and do that. I credit Coach Spurrier for not always, but ingraining in you the importance of just trying to take care of yourself and stay in good health. And this profession is hard enough, and the stress that you better be active and exercise and eat well. And Coach Spurrier I was kidding with somebody the other day, on Monday nights, we would practice. David remembers this. We would practice on Monday nights. We'd have meetings, and then there'd be a dinner break. And then you'd come back and have practice. Well, the players would go over to the Doty Academic Center to get dinner, but as a coach, you're always in a hurry and you don't have a lot of time. So I wouldn't want to go all the way over there. I'd cross the street and go over to the old Bojangles that used to sit right there at the corner. But if you got it, you had to hide it from Coach Spurrier. So like you'd have to literally eat it in the corner where he couldn't see you eating the fried chicken, because he would come around and reprimand you for not having enough greens on your plate and things like that as well. And then I saw they're always taking care of himself, exercising every day, things like that. So I'll credit him for that. I'm a morning person. If I don't try and do something early in the morning, I never will, just because so much always comes up. So I wake up at 5:15 a.m. every day. I'm in our weight room at the facility at 6 a.m. And then, I'm not like a hardcore trainer or anything like that, but, I try and do something just active, cardio, some weights, a little bit of everything. Chip Morton and Luke Day are two strength coaches who are fantastic. It started out as I asked Chip, could you just put together some kind of program for me to follow? 4 or 5 days a week. Needs to take about 45 minutes or an hour. I'll knock it out and be done by 7 a.m. And it started out like he gave me this program, and then I just followed it. But it's kind of turned into he follows me around, and he's like my personal trainer. And then Luke is in there too, and Luke follows me around. So it's kind of turned into them basically, that's an hour of them telling me everything that I'm doing wrong, and maybe think about this, maybe think about that. But it's also, I rely on them a lot. So it's a lot of give and take. There's a lot of decisions that are made about the football program that are made between 6 and 7 a.m. with the three of us in there as well. And in all seriousness, you need, there's a lot of guys that keep me in check, and there's a lot of give and take with all of us, but that's it. And then diet wise, it's hard. Kristen Coggin, our nutritionist, is absolutely unbelievable. Yeah. And the food that's available for our players throughout the day in our facility, I can't go down there because I'll eat so much. So I just, try and send somebody down there just to keep it light. So I won't eat everything down there, but try and eat healthy. And certainly if I do eat something that's not healthy, I try and make up with it in the mornings with Chip and Luke.
Shane, you have seen a lot of that in college football as the years have gone on. It's not just getting out there and winning football games. It is the nutrition aspect. It is the hydration aspect, the weight room, the 24-hour commitment. We had a question from one of our attendees here today, Fred Edger, who said, when you talk about changing the culture, I know it's kind of a broad encompassing term, but how does that relate to the football team, to the football program, to any sport? What do you exactly mean when you say we're changing the culture here into something?
Great question, Fred. To me, it's when you walk in when people talk about culture, to me, it's your environment. And what does your environment or what does your facility feel like when you walk into it day in, day out? And if you're in there for 10 minutes, you can feel it. And not that you necessarily can, because I'm a part of it every day and I feel like it, but it's been pretty cool to hear so many of these prospects that have visited campus since June 1st talk about that and the things that we believe in, them saying that they feel it and see it firsthand, which has been great. But, it's nothing like we snap a finger and things just happen. To me, it's just day in, day out, the consistency that we try and handle ourselves with as a staff, the way that we try and pour into these players on the team, build them up, get to know them on a personal level, and then just being consistent with it day in, day out. And to me, over time, that becomes your environment, becomes your culture, and that's what you're, ultimately about. I mean, we talk about all the time, if you walked around our facility and you would see words like love, you'd see gratitude, you'd see positive energy, you'd see trust, you'd see toughness, you'd see accountability, you'd see competition. And if somebody said, okay, Shane, what do you want this program to be about? Those are all things that are important to me, that not just inside the building, but outside that building as well. The accountability and the gratitude that we want our guys to have in the classroom, on the football field, in the weight room, and throughout the community, and all that. I can go on and on about all those values.
You really have been a part of such successful programs, from, your dad's at Virginia Tech to here with the head ball coach and all those great seasons, Georgia on the just barely missing winning a national championship, Oklahoma. What is your favorite all-time win as an assistant coach at South Carolina, and then your favorite, somewhere else besides South Carolina?
Probably a tie at South Carolina. It would be hard to beat when we beat Alabama out here in 2010. I mean, that was a special, special day. But, everybody talks about what a big win that was, and it absolutely was. But later on that season, when we went down to Gainesville and beat the brakes off Florida to go to the SEC championship game, was pretty big too. To watch Marcus Lattimore carry the ball 43 times or whatever he carried it that night, I think, was pretty awesome. So both of those were really, really big and really, really special. And then, man, so many. Probably just from a sentimental standpoint, my dad's last season at Virginia Tech, to be on the staff with him. And when he announced his retirement, I think we were 4-5 at the time and had to win 2 out of our last 3 to get to a bowl game, to send him out in a bowl game and not in the bowl streak that we had. We beat Virginia and Charlottesville to go to a bowl, and then we won the bowl game. And, being able to be on the sidelines coaching with him in his last game, it wasn't necessarily a big win, but it would have been hard to see him go out after all those years with a loss in his last game. So probably that one.
On the flip side of that, Shane, and you can go back to your time as a player if you want. And I mean, if there was a play that had it not happened, there's one that you look at and say, man, I really regret that one happening. Maybe not to you, but just to your team. Maybe something in the 99 championship game or something while your time was here before. Is there one play that sticks out that said, if that hadn't happened, that would have been a really great win for this team?
Not to talk about a rival, but at Georgia, if we hadn't given up a 2nd and 26 in overtime, I'd be sitting here as a national champion right now. Gene just mentioned it, but that was pretty hard to deal with when you're in the national championship game at Georgia and you're playing Alabama and you're in overtime with Oklahoma or with Alabama, and you're in overtime and you sack them, and it's 2nd and 26 and you give up a touchdown pass for a walk-off loss. That's a hard one that you never get over.
Were you on the sideline?
I was on the sideline.
So, I mean, if you can
slow motion.
What did you think as you saw Tua wind up and throw?
You just see him throw, and you just see the ball in the air, and it's like slow motion. Like, you see the ball thrown, you look, you realize this guy's wide open, and it's almost just like, it's eerie, almost like time just freezes, and it's like, you know what, if this guy doesn't drop this, we're about to lose. And it seemed like slow motion. And then, I've been a part of a lot of losing locker rooms. That one's a hard one even to think about to this day. I mean, just that was tough with the kids on that team. That was really, 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 really hard in that locker room after the game. And then same thing, I've been a part of 2 national championship games. One as a player and one as a coach. And the one as a player was when I was my last year at Virginia Tech, and we're losing to Florida State 28-7. We come back, we take the lead going into the fourth quarter. We're beating them 29-28, and we end up losing in the fourth quarter, and that was hard as well. And that was tough because we'd always been really, really good on special teams at Virginia Tech. And that night we actually got a punt blocked for a touchdown, and we gave up a punt return for a touchdown, which I couldn't tell you, that had never happened before. And it was a couple fluke things and whatnot, but those are 2 plays that you look back, like we had Michael Vick that night, and we were pretty dang good, and we gave them 14 points with our defense not even on the field. So those are two hard ones. Thanks for bringing us.
Sorry about that.
So, yeah.
Was that the game?
I may need that beer now. So.
I mean, looking at it, Shane, just looking into your future strategy at South Carolina, you've learned under Steve Spurrier, under Kirby, under Lincoln Riley. I'm sure there's a lot of things you picked up also from your dad. I'm sure you had a plan of how you wanted to play, how you wanted the Gamecocks to look once you came in. Mm-hmm. Once you saw what the roster had, what you had, how much did you have to scale back or maybe switch a few things and say, I have to suit this to fit the guys I have right now?
A little. I mean, ultimately, regardless of what your personnel is, when you guys come and watch us play, and when people watch us play, I would hope the toughness, the physicality, and the effort and the competitive spirit we play with never wavers, regardless of the personnel we have out there. To me, those are like non-negotiables. But not a ton. I'm kind of old school in the sense that I believe everything starts up front, and I think we're pretty good on the offensive line and defensive line, and we'll have a chance to be successful running the ball and stopping the run. We've made a big point of emphasis on that with our players. To be able to do that for sure. And, offensively, we want to, people say balance. Balance to me is you can run it when you have to run it. You got the ability to throw it when you have to throw it. And there's certainly areas on our offense that we've got to continue to bring along to allow us to do that. I mean, I just came from a place where we've had, 2 Heisman Trophy winners and another finalist and 2 first-round draft picks at wide receiver and everything else. 5 offensive linemen that are all playing in the NFL right now. So I've been kind of part of a different animal the last 3 years out there, and we're working every day to get there. But we got the right people in the building, and we're just, I've said it a lot, and I mean it. I wanted an offense and defense and special teams units that had the flexibility to, adapt to whatever our personnel is. And whether that's 3 running backs and 2 tight ends on the field at all time, or 1 running back and 4 receivers, or whatever it might be, we're flexible enough on offense and multiple enough on offense to get the ball to our playmakers and have a system that we can all rally around.
I was thinking, Shane, I'm not saying this to be a wise ass or anything. I am legitimately curious. You have Kevin Harris, who led the SEC in rushing last year. You had Marshawn Lloyd, who's one of the most ballyhooed prospects they've had since Marcus came through. And you have Luke Doty, who, when we were watching him at Myrtle Beach, he can run a little bit. So you do look at that and say, maybe some options at the triple option in that offense. Would that be a consideration, or is that just something that you have to have the specific linemen, the specific players to run that?
No, I mean, we don't want Luke Doty to be our leading rusher and getting the heck beat out of him every single game, but he's a really good quarterback, and he's a really good athlete, and I think we'd be crazy to not utilize that weapon in certain ways. And people during the spring game, I did an interview where they asked me to compare Luke Doty, and I made reference to I'd been at Alabama with Jalen Hurts, and Jalen was a weapon with his feet, and automatically it came out that I compared Luke Doty to Jalen Hurts, and that's not what I was doing. But I meant it in the sense that if you look at the Oklahoma offense in 2018, my first year with Kyler Murray, It was completely different in 2019 with Jalen Hurts. And not necessarily the schemes we were running, but Kyler, for as fast as he was and all that, we weren't running Kyler, 20 times a game. Jalen, we pretty much were. I mean, Jalen was our leading rusher in 2019 at Oklahoma. And again, we don't want Luke to be our leading rusher this year, but when I've coached defense, and I know when you're a defensive coach or you're a defense and you have to account for that quarterback's athleticism and running ability, that's a different animal that you have to prepare for. And we certainly, would be crazy not to make teams at least have to respect that threat. Triple option, I don't know. I mean, we got 3 running backs. We could, easily put Zaquandre and Marshawn and
Get
Kevin
some
back
pointers from
there.
Wofford,
Get the
to
old
see how
wishbone
they
and let's
do it,
go. Yeah, absolutely. You never know what we put on tape to make other teams work for as well. You mentioned that friendship with Kirby. We got him week 3, so we may throw some stuff on tape.
Coming from Oklahoma, call up Coach Switzer.
Yeah,
I'm sure he's
exactly.
still got a few wishbone playbooks.
Exactly.
Shane, the recruiting footprint here has been kind of Georgia, Florida, South Carolina, of course, Metro Charlotte, trying to get into North Carolina and elsewhere nearby. Do you see that that's your footprint, or would you consider, Texas, California, New Jersey, with all these passing leagues and camps and things, could it expand more? How do you basically see the footprint?
Yeah, great question. We're always going to start right here in South Carolina. There's great high school players and there's great high school coaching and programs. So we're always going to start here. But it's not realistic. You can sign 25 guys a year. It's not realistic to think that you can compete and win a championship by signing 25 players from South Carolina. We just don't have the population that a Texas has, or a Georgia, or a Florida, or a California. We're always going to start here. But then you're right, there's so many surrounding areas that we've had success with, whether it be Georgia, Florida, North Carolina. So that'll be our immediate footprint. But I believe this, there's an untapped area into Virginia, Maryland, Washington, D.C., Pennsylvania, New Jersey that we can tap into. If you're a young man in those states and you want to play SEC football, it's a heck of a lot easier to get to Columbia, South Carolina than it is Lexington, Kentucky, or Auburn, Alabama, or Athens, Georgia, even. Myself and a lot of coaches on our staff, Pete Limbo has ties in that area. Torian Gray has ties in that area. We always want to recruit those areas. A strong percentage of our enrollment here at Carolina are students from those states. It's great academics. So many of them I've found out they vacation down here anyway. I mean, I can't tell you how many recruits have been like, Coach, I've been coming to Hilton Head, Myrtle Beach, Charleston, wherever for years. We had a young man here last week from Ohio, one of the top players in the country for next year, that was on his way back from Hilton Head and a family vacation. And they drive right up 77 and they look over there and they see Williams-Brice Stadium. So it's a natural fit that we want to tap into because of our ties. The world's a lot smaller than it was when I was here before. When I was here before, there was no Twitter. There was no Instagram. If I wanted to, when I was recruiting Alshon Jeffrey or any of those guys, you couldn't even text kids at that point, NCAA rule-wise. So I literally would have my one phone call a week where I could call Alshon. Other than that, I had to write him a letter, and that was the extent of the communication. Now, the communication's so wide open, not to mention the world's smaller with social media. All these young men, all these kids know each other because of camps and combines and things like that. And then there's always coaches, the staff we put together. Justin Stepp, for example, spent time at SMU and coached at Arkansas. He's always recruited Texas. I was at Oklahoma. I recruited areas of Texas. So, we're not going to be all over the country necessarily recruiting players, but if there's ties in certain areas that we have as coaches, then we're certainly going to look into those also.
Looking at your current roster, Shane, have you decided on your captains for next year? Is that something going to be decided later?
That'll be something that's decided later. We haven't even talked about that. I've been a part of different programs where you vote on captains before the season. I've been a part of different programs where you decide on captains, after the season, and that's something that we're still kicking around. I mean, we've pretty much identified, who are the leaders of this team. Right. Let's really help these guys. Connor Shaw and Derek Moore have done a great job with that on our staff of developing these guys as leaders. Who are the guys that maybe aren't leaders right now that we need to be leaders? let's help them. And then who are these guys that maybe think they're leaders right now, but maybe need to just chill out for a minute. We're working on that too. So.
That was actually my next question. I mean, you look at the guys you have. Who are some of the guys you know? It's like, I can depend on this guy. I'm going to count on him as one of my team leaders this year, if you feel comfortable.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, there's few that, just come to mind. And honestly, I mean, there's 15 to 20 guys that I could sit here and name. But, it's on the offensive line, just Javon Gwynn has just been steady and just rock steady since the day that I got here. And a lot of these guys won awards during the spring for that. The carry-on Joyner at wide receiver has been fantastic. Luke, to be a young guy, has been lights out, especially this summer in our summer workouts. Those guys are pretty much leading on their own and doing a lot of that. Nick Muse has been, fantastic. Jaheim Bell is a guy that his voice carries weight in that locker room that needs to come along. JJ Inagbare up front. Jabari Ellis has done a great job. Jalen Foster is a guy. I was talking to Cam Smith, Jamar Brown, and RJ Roderick today about something. And they said to me, actually, let's go ask Jalen, because he's kind of the wise soul in our group. And we went over there and talked to him about this issue that we were dealing with. So there's a lot of guys. That's a handful. There's a bunch more I could have named for sure. And that's a good thing. I mean, the best teams that I've been around, the best teams that I've been around have, that leadership from within. And, y'all, please don't hate me, because I know I've mentioned Georgia like 3 or 4 times, but I've told this story to some of our players that 2016 team at Georgia we were okay. I think we went 8-5. Some guys left that program. We didn't have great leadership. Same team basically came back in 2017 minus, Jake Fromm came in as our quarterback. But the biggest difference from 16 to 17 was when we came back in 17, Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, Roquan Smith basically said, this is our team, and they ran it. And everybody else had no choice but to fall in line. And we ended up, playing for the national championship. And a lot of that was the leadership on that team. And I could give that example for a lot of different, places that I've been, the successful teams. South Carolina with, Connor Shaw and Pat DeMarco and those guys, even at a young age. I left after Connor's, freshman or sophomore year, I think. But even then, it was evident what a leader he was. Right. And Connor and DJ Swearinger have talked. DJ came and talked to our team, and there were clips of that on social media right before the spring game. And DJ talked about that, in so many words, G-rated, we ran the team as players. We didn't need the coaches to tell us what to do. It was our show, and we weren't going to let anybody outwork us. And it was good for our players to hear that for sure.
So Shane, you've got this guy, EJ Jenkins, transferred in from St. Francis, 6'7" wide receiver that you've worked with at tight end some. In fact, I think Eric Kimry, right before the spring game, said he was 6'8". And I'm wondering, is he 6'9" or 6'10" now? And
are you going to loan him to Frank Martin?
He caught a touchdown pass in the spring game, right? Yeah. So is it okay to be really excited, for fans to be excited about this guy? Or
no, for sure. He's a guy that we're excited about. We were when I got here, when I took over, we had Connor Jordan, Luke Doty, and Colton Gauthier were the only quarterbacks that we had on the roster. So we knew right away that you better increase the depth at that position. So we immediately went into looking to add a quarterback to the roster, came across Jason Brown and started watching his video. He's his teammate from St. Francis. And as we're watching Jason, our offensive staff kept seeing this big, he's not 6'9", he's not 6'10", he's close to 6'7", making all these catches out there. And they called me in the room and they're like, you got to watch this guy. And it was impressive. So he's got a ways to go. I mean, he's raw, and he and Jason both, they didn't have a 2020 football season. Right. So it's been a while since they played a real live football game. But both those guys are two guys that got better as the spring went on. You saw that in the spring game, and we talked about it a minute ago, just about offensively matchups and being able to get our best players on the field and creating mismatches for defenses. And regardless of what EJ's playing, whether he's a wide receiver, whether he's a tight end, whatever he is, that's a tough matchup for defenses, whether it's a linebacker trying to cover him or run with him, whether it's a defensive back. It's because he's got, great length, and he's really working hard to get better at catching the ball and working on becoming a great route runner too.
Well, if Eric is his coach, first of all, how does he feel about EJ wearing his old number? And two, does he say, okay, I got the perfect pass pattern for you?
Yeah.
I mean, it seems kind of natural, right?
It does. Yeah, I'm surprised that hasn't come up with him as well. I mean,
All you got to do is go to the corner and jump.
Yeah, exactly. So we'll implement that, maybe call it the Kimry or something like that to name that play after him. But I think he feels good about him wearing the number. He hasn't voiced any displeasure to me, and not that I would let him. That's been the biggest challenge, is just jersey numbers and who wants what and things like that. So if he came in my office complaining about somebody wearing his jersey, that conversation wouldn't last long, because that's been enough of an issue.
You don't have to say who, but is there anybody who's coming in and say, hey, I want to wear number 2 or number 38, and they just didn't know?
I had one guy ask me about a jersey, and it was, sorry, bud, that's retired. And I kind of made that mistake myself the night before Alshon signed. Maybe promising Alshon he could wear 2, and then somebody didn't agree with that as well. So
that.
yeah, I learned from experience on that one.
Now Steve took the blame for that
as
one,
well.
right?
Yeah, maybe me. But no, we had one guy that asked for 2. But problem is now everybody wants single digits, and the NCAA allows you to have 2 different guys in the same jersey number as long as they're not on the field at the same time. So I think going into this season, every number from 1 to 21, I think, has 2 different people wearing that jersey number. So good luck to you guys in the press box figuring it out, because it's going to be a nightmare for us on the sidelines.
You're going to keep the names on the back of the jerseys, right?
Yeah, something.
Good.
Yeah,
right.
I don't want to be the guy that has to be in charge of not making sure these 2 guys run on the field at the same time. Fortunately, they're all on one. They're not on offense.
Right.
Number 3 maybe on offense. Number 3 maybe on defense. Yeah. So you're not both on the side of the ball. But I did see a team that when I was looking at one of our opponents this upcoming season, we were meeting as a staff to go through kind of a preview of the opponent and just kind of talking through offense, defense, special teams. And there actually was a team that we played that has 2 number 0s, and they were both on the defensive side of the ball. So good luck to them trying to figure that one out.
You can wear number 0 in football now. Has anybody requested that one?
You can wear 0. We've had a bunch of requests for 0, believe it or not.
Shane, you can feel free to get some input from your kids on this question, but what has been or what would be the ideal Shane Beamer family vacation?
Anyone? There's a lot of good ones. To me, there's so many. For years, we've always just vacationed here in South Carolina. So, I mean, that's pretty darn ideal for us. I was telling you guys earlier, we went to Charleston yesterday. It was our first day that we didn't have recruits visiting since June 1st. And it's great to be able to just hop in the car and drive there and spend lunch, dinner, go hang out on the beach, shop a little bit, and come back. If I had to quiz them, they would probably say Mexico right now, just because they lost that trip due to COVID. We were literally supposed to leave for a family vacation to Cabo. We're actually going with Lincoln Riley and his family. Right last year before COVID, we were leaving on that Saturday. And then I believe it was that Wednesday night in Oklahoma City where Rudy Gobert with the Jazz tested positive, and everything got shut down. So we didn't go to Mexico. So at least with my oldest, I hear from her weekly, when are we going to get to do that trip? So ideal to me. I mean, I know it may be cheesy, but I love spending time with them. I don't have a ton of hobbies other than just, coaching football, and I love to read and spend time with them. So we try and plan as many things that we can as a family. And it started out, we took our oldest, Sutton, when she turned 10, we said, okay, we're going to take you on your own 10th birthday trip. And then when each of you turn 10, we'll take you somewhere. Well, now they're like campaigning and negotiating. And when their 10th trip comes up, and I don't want anybody else going with me, and my 13th trip and my 12th trip. So they're good recruiters and negotiators, because they're bargaining on all those too.
You said you like to read.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what the last really good book you read, and your all-time favorite book besides like the Bible or something.
Man, I've been asked that question before, and I need to do a better job of going back and figuring out what the best one is. It's hard to say which one stands out. Last one, if it sounds awful, I don't even remember because I feel like it's been so long ago because of this job. I bought 3 books yesterday in Charleston. Ran in the Barnes and Noble over there, right there by the Isle of Palms connector.
Town center.
Yep, I ran in the town center and I bought 3 books, and then I took them back to the condo that we're living in right now and stacked them on top of like the 8 books that I still have that I've got to try and read this summer. So I need to find time to do that. I love to read. I'm trying to think, maybe the last one was probably there was a big book on the New England Patriots and their dynasty over the years. I mean, it was huge that I read last summer, and then I didn't read anything during the season. I don't remember, but I can't remember. But I'm a history buff.
Yeah.
I love reading history. I love reading people's autobiographies, and I love reading about coaches. So I bought a history book yesterday, and I bought 2 coaching books about coaches yesterday that I hadn't read. But I mean, I read a ton. In a normal year, I'll probably in the summertime I'll read 3 or 4 books in the summertime, and I will this year too. Once we get into July, I'll read a bunch. I go, I go back really. Eric Hyman, the previous athletic director here at South Carolina, he gave me a book a long time ago that was really impactful by Bob Bodine, The Power of Who. I don't know if anybody has ever read it, but it was really pretty good because Coach Hyman gave it to me. He knew I had goals and was wanting to be a head football coach and all that. And he said, you ought to read this because as a young coach, you think that it's about impressing Coach Spurrier or myself or whoever, when in actuality, as you advance in your career, whether it's coaching, whether it's the media industry, whatever it may be, it really gets down to who you know, and your neighbor may know somebody that knows somebody. And that was one, over 10 years ago that I read that I've always stuck with me. But there's been a bunch of them. My dad wrote a book. I'd be remiss if I didn't say that I loved his book, and that's my favorite. So probably that one if you want to go that route. But there's a bunch of other ones I've read too besides that one also.
Shane, you mentioned a lot of recruiting stories right now. You talked about Alshon a lot. What's the craziest recruiting story you remember from your time here previously, from 7 to 10? Who was the guy with the nuttiest story or the nuttiest way you had to land him?
Wow.
I remember Alshon in the hotel room the night before and how that all kind of came out after the fact.
Alshon was a grind, for sure, just because he committed to Southern Cal and in June, and then there was no early signing period, so it was 8 months of trying to recruit him. Man, that's a good question. I mean, there was a lot of good ones because back then it was just so tough because you didn't have the communication that you had. Like Jadeveon Clowney, for example. Nowadays you can text and call, and juniors, seniors, all that. When Jadeveon was a junior, you only got one phone call in his junior year of high school, and that was the only contact you had with him. And we gave that to Coach Spurrier to call him. And I remember it was in the month of May, and it got to be around May 28th, 29th, something like that. And I just called Coach Spurrier to make sure that he had talked to Alshon or talked to Jadeveon and everything went well. And he's like, yeah, actually I hadn't talked to him yet. I called him during school last week and just left him a voicemail. Left him a voicemail? I'm like, crap. So I'm like, Ellis, Coach Spurrier hasn't called Jadeveon yet, or he called him, but he left a voicemail. So we still have that call, or we still have the call to make and things like that. But there's a lot of good ones, and it was, it was a team effort. I was the recruiting coordinator and probably get, too much credit for a lot of that. We had a great group of coaches, and probably the biggest thing that just stands out is you just look around college football now and the size of like recruiting departments. And then I keep saying back then, like it was forever ago, 10 years ago, it was the 9 assistant coaches, Coach Spurrier, and we had Robbie Lyles and Patrick Shine. And basically that was our recruiting department and the football program. And now you just see these armies of recruiting staffs. And I mean, we're not different. We're not as high. We don't have as many people as a lot of schools do, but it's a lot more than what we had back then for sure.
Yes.
Well, Shane, we really appreciate this at the Post and Courier, and I'm going to turn this
Thanks
over
to
to
Backstreets for hosting this as well.
Yeah, thanks to
Absolutely.
Backstreets. I'm going to turn this over to Andy Shane of the Post and Courier to wrap this thing up.
All right.
All right.
Thank you.
Right. All right. First of all, a big thanks to Gene and to David and to Coach Beamer for being here today. Some great questions. Thank you for taking the time and answering. And we're going to have that critique of the difference between Oklahoma barbecue and South Carolina
Yeah,
barbecue.
well, South
at some
Carolina all
point.
day long,
Of
for
course.
sure. So without a doubt.
Well, the man knows where he is right now, for sure. Again, I want to thank everybody for watching online. I want to thank everyone here again who came out to Backstreets to come out and support what we're doing here. And one of the things I do want to say, if you like the journalism we're doing, if you like the events that we're holding, the best way to support us is to subscribe to the Post and Courier. And right now we're having our best sale ever. 4 months for $4. Hey, that's a couple of cups of coffee to get 4 months of the state's largest newspaper. And also, remember those 13 journalists I talked about in Columbia, including David and me? Well, we have cards like this that'll get you half off an annual subscription to the Post and Courier. That's $10 a month to get, again, the newspaper that has the largest news gathering operation here in the state of South Carolina. And also remember that David's newsletter, his Gamecock newsletter, is going to start very, very soon. David, what you going to have in it, man?
It's going to be a lot of things that we have in the everyday paper, Andy, but mostly it's going to be a lot of my everyday, just kind of background information, insider information, pulling back the curtain a little bit and saying, here's what we can write in the paper, and here's what some of the other things that kind of went down. So obviously, if you want to know the latest topic right now about Don Staley in the NBA, let me know. I'll try to answer your questions.
And also, will there be the Shane Beamer Book Club as well?
I mean, hey, somebody's got to have it, right?
Absolutely. Maybe that's a new angle for sure. Weekly column.
I like that. There we go. So again, exclusive content you're going to get from this guy who's been covering the Gamecocks for almost 20 years. If you missed this event, if you want to tell someone who wants to watch this event, I want you to go to postandcourier.com/events, and there'll be a recording of this put up fairly soon. So please look forward to that. Again, thank you to everyone who's here. Thank you to everyone who's watching. If you're a subscriber, thank you. If you're not a subscriber, I want to thank you. David wants to thank you. Gene wants to thank you. Chris Zoller here wants to thank you. So again, have a good night, everybody. Thank you again. Thank you to everybody.